I've entitled this morning, There is a Reason. It fits. And I mean by that, things that occur, there's a reason why God does things the way that He does them. It fits, and it fits into what I'll call a bigger package, and that is the message that He is proclaiming. Ultimately, the message is Jesus. Who He is, what He's done, what He's doing, what's available to us. There is a message, and things fit into that message. There is a reason. So I think the last half of that last song, Steve, that you led in, I'm sure it's a Charity Gale song. The feel that I had, it was kind of how if I was there when Mary Magdalene was there, when she was standing at the tomb, Peter and John had run and left. They had seen that the tomb was empty. She was there, and she heard someone behind her. She thought it was the gardener. And Jesus asked her what was wrong, who she was looking for. And she explained, and then he spoke her name, Mary, and she heard it. I'm sure he said it the way he had said Mary many times in the 3 years, and I think she was among the disciples a lot during those 3 years. That moment, that time when he said that, said Mary, the time that it was, that song, the last, I'll say the last half of it, is the feeling that I have as I think about that moment. I think in eternity past, I'm not even sure you can use that word eternity past, but in eternity past, before the foundation of the world, when the purposes and plans of God were understood, Christ was slain before the foundation of the world. So I'm going to say in eternity past, the plan for that, the provision for that, the intentions for that, whatever the right words are, were among the things, I think, all of us. And I think when they got to the cross and the realization of what kinds of things would happen to Jesus, what He would have to bear, and then the time that He would spend, that in faith He would release Himself, He would release His Spirit, He would release Himself to the Father. Even though I think He had tasted, I think, for the last 3 hours of His life, but boy, that's just a guess, what it was like to have no relationship with God. He tasted it fully, completely. I think it was staggering. I think that's why He asked if there was another way, was because it had to involve, from my perspective, it had to involve an ending of His relationship with the Father for that time period, that He became sin. And then we know the Scriptures make it clear He went to hell. What happened there, how long He was there, we know He arose in 3 days, what is considered a 3-day time period. It touches 3 different days. But that time period when, I'll say, it was thought through, it was understood, however that happened. It's incredible to me that in that planning, I don't think it happened this way, but I'm going to suggest that the Father said to Jesus, now, in essence, now before you come and present your blood, I want you to talk to Mary Magdalene. I don't think Jesus did this, so this is very human. You want me to talk to Mary Magdalene when I arise and I'm ready to do what was pictured for 1,500 years every time the Day of Atonement took place? And the high priest went into the Holy of Holies? You want me to talk with Mary Magdalene first? I don't think Jesus did that. But it could have happened. Why? There is a reason. It fits. It fits into the message. So, moving into the story, Mary Magdalene actually is mentioned 12 times in the Bible. All 12 of them are in the 4 Gospels. There's one that kind of that does explain ahead of time who Mary was, Mary Magdalene. It's in Mark 16:9. I've read it recently. Now, when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. So early in the public ministry, the scriptures acknowledge there were several people, women who infirmed, who he ministered to in this particular group that's referred to, of which Mary Magdalene is mentioned, and there were 7 demons that he cast out of her. Mary Magdalene, it's an interesting name. Reading from Matthew 15:9, and he sent away the multitude, got into the boat, and came to the region of Magdala. There was a region around the Sea of Galilee. It was a small area, a small town village, and its name was Magdala. Mary Magdalene, at least from the sources that I read, are convinced she came from Magdala. And Mary Magdalene is an identification of where she was from, not what you would say was her last name, where she was from. If Faye could be my wife could be referred to as a Knoxvillian, Faye the Knoxvillian. We would be saying Faye who lives in Knoxville. Where she lives is Knoxville. But she's of Knoxville, been a part of Knoxville for so many years, as I have, that you could call us, we are Knoxvillians. We are from Knoxville. Mary was from Magdala, and Magdalene is referred to as not a last name, but it's an identification. There's a particular name they give. It's an identification. That's where she was from. She was from Magdala, Mary Magdalene. Smaller. The passage of Scripture in particular was one of the things that I did this week, I found myself doing, is asking God, why Mary Magdalene? Not in a demanding way, why did you do that? But of all the people in the world, all the people who were alive at that point in time, why Mary Magdalene? Afforded what I think there's 2 women that the Bible identifies were incredibly honored. Obviously, the first would be Mary, the mother of Jesus. There's no doubt the honor is spoken of quite significantly. Mary, the mother of Jesus. But there's another Mary, Mary Magdalene, I believe is the second. And in some dimensions, they're very, very different categories. But when I look at the category that Mary Magdalene is in, help me understand my life, our lives. What happens in my life? How should I look upon my life? the things that are going on. I think of Mary Magdalene as honored above any person in some dimension because of the time and the resurrection and to me, the clear understanding of what happened prior to his going for what I think was the most magnificent moment of all eternity. Was the real moment of atonement when Jesus took his blood to the very throne of heaven. And prior to that, he visits Mary, visits with Mary. That in its place, in its timing. Why Mary? So just looking at the very heart of the incident again, John 20:14. Now, when she had said this, Mary stayed. Peter and John had gone in, looked in the tomb. They left. She stayed. She looked in again, and she saw an angel, a young man, inside. They didn't see that. She did. She turned. She heard noise around her, beside her. I think Jesus cleared his throat. I think maybe he shifted his foot. Maybe, I don't know. Something was done to catch her attention. Now, when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there and did not know that it was Jesus. He altered her vision, her eyes, is just as well as he altered his appearance, either one of those. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" I'm sure she had heard. I know she was around for 3 years. She knew his voice. "Why are you weeping?" And she, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Interesting, of all the disciples, of all the women, she was the one having this encounter. Why? And Jesus said to her, then he spoke her name, and he either lifted her eyes, lifted her ears, and I mean by that the filters that were on her ears, or the filter that was on his voice, and he said to her, "Mary," and that's the feel I have of the last half of the song we just did. Worthy, worthy. What a moment. She was the first human being who saw the resurrected Lord, as much as we know. What a moment. And the mood of that aspect of the worship, that worship song. She turned and said to him, "Rabboni," which is to say, teacher. She knew who it was. And Jesus said to her, she must have either grabbed onto him or fell down to his feet and grabbed onto his ankles, something along those lines. And Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren." He gave her an assignment. You go to my brethren, and you tell them, and say to them, "I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." Mary, I have a job for you. I want you to go to my brethren, the people, the disciples, the followers of Christ at that time. I want you to go to them. I want you to tell them, "You saw me, and that I've told you I'm ascending to my Father and their Father, your Father, and to my God and your God." And you tell them that. What a moment. Why? How does it, as Faye would ask, how does that impact me Monday morning? It's interesting so far. You kind of caught my attention, kind of. But Monday morning, that's when Faye's going to say, "Okay, what have I got that I can apply on Monday morning?" Good question. And Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord and that he had spoken these things to her. We are given the clear understanding that she did what Jesus told her to do. Then I say, why Mary Magdalene? Why? Because among those who were around during that time period was Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was among the four that's mentioned in one of the Gospels, as well as there's the mother, a different Mary, the mother of James and John. There were multiple Marys that were present, different time periods. Why Mary Magdalene? And I want to say, because it fit the message. What message? The message God was telling. It fit the message. So are you saying that it's possible in the horse race a week or two ago that when sovereignty won and journalism lost, that could have been a message that God could have been speaking through? Yes. So you're saying that part of the message that God was speaking, that God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, that God was speaking at that time period of the resurrection and the ascension, that part of the message included a Mary Magdalene. But it wasn't happenstance, or it wasn't, she was the only one left over. I'm saying that's the same for you and me and us. How you look at your life, how we look at our lives, how we look at the time that we have, the time period, how we look at it, impacts greatly how we spend the time, how we value it. Why Mary Magdalene? It fit. Going on. You could offer these things. I have this year, last week, I'll say she was a woman. She could represent Eve. Since the first one, I believe, that tasted sin based on the biblical record of Genesis, the first one was a woman, was Eve. It could be that it's clear that the reason there was a Mary Magdalene was because it was important to Jesus, to the Godhead. It was important to women to let you know, in a sense, you are covered. And whatever has been branded on you, thrown on you, accused on you, or so on, it could be that God was saying, I want to settle this forever. So even before Jesus does with his blood, what 1,500 years of examples, he was going to encounter a woman. And someone could say, she in essence was an Eve. Not replacement, but because of Eve, because of women, and because of the story of the fall. That's why. I think it would be hard to eliminate that and say, nah, that doesn't have any bearing whatsoever. I don't believe that. I think there's so many possibilities. That certainly is among them, and I would be hard-pressed to say I could eliminate that as a possibility, even though it's of interest. I couldn't. I see that. Number two, she had been demonized. And I've put all, meaning this was a person, yes, a woman, but this was a person who the Scripture identified that her life had been so under the control of the devil that she had, the number 7 is such an important number that's used in the Bible so many ways. It's a number for completeness, and I'll say she was completely, she was completely demonized. She had 7 that they were able to be identified in some way, shape, or form. And so she was a picture of broken humanity under the influence, under the impact, broken lives, disturbed lives, demonized lives, strongholds, just life so contained, so controlled. And the Godhead wanted to give the message, what he's done is so important because it touches you, it touches women, it touches all. I'd be hard-pressed. I couldn't. And I couldn't remove that as, well, that's a possible explanation of, or it could be one of the multiple factors that were involved. I would agree. I'd say, I agree. But why was the person who was chosen to illustrate those two dimensions, women in specific and all of mankind in general, why was Mary Magdalene chose to be that illustration? Because I think both of those are very valid. I put the third. She cared for the Lord. Well, maybe Mary Magdalene was chosen because she really cared for the Lord. And it almost seemed like after his resurrection, she was there for the crucifixion as well as others were. She was there for the tomb as well as others were. Multiple times. She was there. She was spoken to by the angels. None of the disciples. We're under the impression, at least I'm under the impression, none of them were spoken to by angels. None of them saw angels in this time period. The Roman soldiers, a couple of Roman soldiers did. Those are the only men that I can see in all four texts, all four Gospels, that saw angels. She did. Mary obviously did. It's clear she cared for the Lord. She wanted to anoint his body. That's why she went in the first place after the third day. But there were others, it seems, who wanted to do that also. And she obviously had made multiple trips. She was in shape. I can tell you one thing I know about Mary Magdalene. All the running she did to and from the tomb, she was in shape. And I'm among those who believe the Mount of Olives is where that tomb really is. And if you've been to the Mount of Olives, if you go up into the city, the old city, you got to go down quite a ways, and then you got to go up quite a ways. It's a pretty hefty run. So I think she was in shape, but maybe it's because she was the most in shape. That's not true. That was my attempt at a joke. Moving on. I put number 4. She kept getting in line, which I'm alluding to. She kept getting in line. She went. She saw the angel message. She went to Peter and John. She came back. She went real early with several others. There were multiple trips she made, and that's what I meant. She kept getting in line, and when Peter and John, after they looked in and they went in, ultimately they went into the empty tomb, and then John, the Gospel of John makes it clear, she stays. So I have a title that she kept getting in line. It was her. Maybe that's the why. No, I've done this. What we are going to do. I meant by that the Godhead before the foundation of the world. This is what's going to unfold. And a part of that unfolding was Mary Magdalene. Was her name spoken? I don't know. In before the foundation of the world? I don't know. Sure could have been. And so I said it had to fit into the message. The person who was there, in addition to these things, I think she represented women. I do. I think she represented all of humanity, demonized, under the influence of how important that was. This is the answer. What I have in my hands, and the scars in my hand, and the scars in my side. This is the answer. It had to fit in the message. The message. Our lives we're a part of the message. What message? The message God is bringing. through you, to you, through you in particular, in us corporately as a local church, in us individually, in our own lives. God is bringing a message. So I put, this week God gave me a hint. I think you can tell I have been so impacted by this encounter and the ascension, and for the last 10 years, I've spoken of that so many times. So impacted by that moment. And Mary Magdalene, between the resurrection and I suggest you do a lot of praying in tongues. I believe God has pointed that out to us. At least He's pointed it out to me. I believe the supernatural message of the healed tongue of a couple of weeks ago, the message that Barbara Meyer spoke of a brother-in-law, that I think was a phenomenal supernatural demonstration. The tongue. Spending more time. I've spent a lot of time praying in tongues. I'm spending a whole lot of time praying. I have found the more you pray in tongues, the more insight comes, understanding, revelation. The more Bible things mean something to you, the less that through the years I've found, the less that I do that, the less that comes. Because there's sensitivity, there's strength. You're talking to God. He who speaks in an unknown tongue is not speaking. You're talking to God. Howbeit in the Spirit he speaks mysteries. He who speaks in tongues edifies himself. He who prophesies, Paul, the Apostle Paul was talking about at that in 1 Corinthians 14 about church services, the church, the gathering of the church. He who speaks in a tongue edifies himself, but he who prophesies, he's talking about the gathering of the church, edifies the church. A hint from God. So sometimes, it hasn't happened very often in my life, but this week, real early in the morning, it was like God He dropped into my spirit. It was like a huge container that had lots of things in it. But it came in less than a microsecond. It was there, and with all kinds of understanding that has taken days for it to unfold. And oh my, that's and so many things at a place that are connected in my life. One of the things that came, that was a part of it, was this: a resurrection is coming. I am trying to lead you to hold on to what I believe are the two fundamental prophecies, plus so many other supportive prophecies that have come through the years, of the calling that God has on us as a congregation of people, a privilege that's been extended to us. And when He supernaturally gave us rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, continue steadfast in prayer, when He supernaturally delivers that to this congregation through a mission team, it's like, you're going to need it. When something comes that incredibly pronounced, you're going to need it. Which we do. So I believe that there's a resurrection that's coming in Russia that's going to inflame what I think is the Russian Orthodox Church. About 70% of everybody in Russia claims the Russian Orthodox Church. That doesn't mean they go every week. It doesn't mean that. But that's a huge number. And a resurrection among that number, oh my goodness. So sometimes when there's a message that God's causing you to trumpet, to proclaim, to be willing to stand for, stand on. There are times when that message will be illustrated. God will bring examples to you, to encourage you, to validate what you're doing. I would say in the past 2 months, I've been going through a time period that's been building, and I've come to this week I came in this instant in this prayer, or early in the morning, this instant, how many things were connected together in the moment that's occurring, that we're in, that I'm in. It was like, well, what was there an incredible preceding resurrection in the life of, certainly Lazarus, the resurrection of Lazarus. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something on that order, but prior to his death, burial, and resurrection, was stunning. So what I've put in here is Gift Quest, Ken Fincham, Nick Headley, House of Prayer. Gift Quest, Len Sisson and I did 40 years ago. We were both pastoring, and we felt like we wanted to involve people in ministry in the local church, help them understand who they were based on Romans chapter 12. And we both had a fair amount of education, so we both had test and measurement type stuff. And we both felt like what was out, what existed at that time 40 years ago, what was out, what existed, really didn't have any kind of understanding of test and measurements, and it wasn't put together very well at all, and you really had no reliability. And we felt like, we think we could do a better job. Len, being a programmer, a computer programmer, I felt God had given me some core understandings, and Len said, I'll write the program. In essence, I did a lot of the creative work. Len did all of the programming, and we took a year and a half to do it. And he wrote it in a language 40 years ago that was understood. It was an acceptable language. And through the years, it's persisted. And through the years, because of the way it was done, there has not been another program like it that's been produced that we are aware of in the face of the earth. There's not another one that exists. But it was written, in essence, for XP-type computers. And so as we went from XP to, I don't know what the next one was, but Windows 7, then we went to Windows 10, then we've gone to Windows 11 if you're a PC person. And the programs, you can't really load it in 10 or 11. 11 for sure, we can't get it in. And Len's life has changed, his health has changed, his ability, and almost 15, 20 years ago he made the decision, I have put all that I can into it and I can't do any more, and I know nothing about it. And I felt like, Lord, this is dead. And I felt like the time period, the harvest that's coming is going to be filled with, and the harvest is largely stated to be among the young. This is a perfect resource that gives people a glimpse at how they have been gifted, how God has gifted them, and if there ever was a time period in the history of the church that it would find its day, we're moving into that day, and we can't do anything. I can't write. Len's not writing. It's out of date. It's totally out of date. It was made for diskettes. And Len just wasn't able to, couldn't, for lots of reasons. I couldn't for all the reasons. It was like, this is gone. And then we did a city quake here at New Covenant, and there was a man who came in the first day he walked in. He looked up at the ceiling, and it was like God did a boing, to him and the flags, and he couldn't get past the flags He could only look at the flags. He could talk about the flags. He had questions, all kinds of questions. Ken Fincham, he had all kinds of questions about the flags. What do these mean? Why are they up there? And who are you? And what do you believe? Ken was filled with questions and so on. We soon discovered Ken knows lots of people. He's very interested in people. He knows lots of people. We've had lots of fun with Ken through the months. As the months has gone by, it was this summer, August. I met Ken in August a year ago. And about 2 months ago, I said, Ken, do you know anybody who can, because we have to have someone, if GiftQuest is going to live, and I think it's moving into its time period, its greatest potential time period of all time, but it has to be so radically changed. There has to be a youth edition that's not written by, we were 40 years old church. It's got to be written by somebody who's not 40 years old and not church because of what's going on in the world today. It's got to be, and it's got to be on a cell phone, and it's got to be able to be used in all those things. Do you know anybody who does that? And he said, well, yeah, actually, I've met somebody real recently. His name is Nick Hadley, and he's here in Knoxville, and he knows Ken. We knew Ken. I gave him an inventory. I said, hey, give this to Nick and ask him if he's ask him to take it, and if he likes what it is. We're looking for somebody to write a program that'll work on the web. And so he took it. He's a computer programmer, and it just so happened one of the things the program does is it will profile you based on your vocations. What it suggests are vocations you should consider based on your giftedness. And the number one, and there's about 150 vocations, and the number one vocation that the program suggested he should consider was a computer programmer. You think that caught his attention? His wife took it. She's a florist. She has been a florist. She loves florists. She took it. Her number one secular vocation came out to be a florist. It was like, what's happening here? And we met and talked, and he said, I'll write it. And I'll do it for free. We're talking about, and when it's written and it's turning an income, then we'll deal with how that money is handled. But up until that point in time, I'll pay the bills. Huh? And it's like, God, you're bringing this thing back into existence. And what his goal is to produce a 24-hour international house of prayer in Knoxville. That's what he's looking for to be able to fund. And that's what he has said. That's what I intend to use the resources that this, he thinks, will surely generate with the passage of time to fund a house of prayer here in Knoxville. I've put Cindy. Cindy works in the office. Cindy helps me with lots of things. And about 3 weeks ago, I said, Cindy, can you look up Ken's GiftQuest for me and so on? And she pulled up GiftQuest and on her computer, and she said the first time ever in her whole entire life, she pulled up GiftQuest on her computer in the office, which she's pulled it up many times, and it never has come up with the presenting name that you see. Is usually it's the name of the person you entered in last. There, the person that it was Cindy Hatchett. She was shocked. She said, I did this like 30 years ago. And she took the time to read through the entire thing, and she said, that's exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing and so on. It catches her attention. Julie Porcella works with teens. She's worked with Young Life in the Loudoun County the past 4 years. She's on staff, full-time on staff, and knows kids, loves kids. I did pre-marriage counseling for she and my son, and they took GiftQuest back, I don't know how many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and they were both shocked with how well it profiled them, it helped explain them to each other, and Julie is overseeing the teen version because that will be out there that teens can access on their cell phones, and they can plug the answers in, and it's like, God, you brought to life something that was dead. Are you giving a message to me, to us? I put the House of David. Somebody told me about the movie series, The House of David. I've been watching that. I've looked at it twice. It's got 8 episodes. And I understood, after this event happened to me this week, the middle of this week, I understood the real story of the way it's put together. The House of David is God will let you know who you are. The real theme is you will know from the inside who you are. David discovering who he was, others beginning to discover who he was. Yes, there's Goliath. Yes, there's all the people and the interactions. There's all kinds of stories. But it was clear to me what the real underlying theme is. God will let you know who you are. Well, that's what Gift Quest is all about. It's like these things, these are all pieces. They're all fitting together. It was helping me in my thinking. The flags, the nations, global. Nick Hadley, when he heard about what Gift Quest does, what it is, and he's very willing to put it in Spanish, put it in youth, in addition to the classic, Gift Quest Classic, and he's the one who used the word, he said, this is going to be global. This is going to go global because of what it has the ability to do. And it's like, I'm saying this here around me in the realm that a lot of it at home, when I do things that are at home, it's like, God, you're bringing to life something that was dead. It was all gone. Now it's brimming with life. Last one I have, Romans 12. Romans 12 is where Gift Quest comes out of. And in the starting phases, it's real. I realize that already in the programming that's been done already, that's available already, it's close. It's not exactly like it was, but it's real close. And it's like I felt like God said, "This is real important. Make it as accurate as it can be." So all of this is going on in my own life. That happened at real early in the morning, Wednesday. And I've been unpacking it. Okay, God, you're saying something to me. And all of these things, all these people, you're Mary Magdalene. Why Mary Magdalene? So I've put here, Magdalene. Okay, personal. She was a Mary. That choice was deliberate. It was intentional. It was time. It was absolutely time. I found myself asking God over and over, why Mary? Which really is the answer for why me? Why me? Why now? Why? But Magdalene ultimately derives from the noun, I can't even tell you the word, Migdal. I know that word, meaning tower and strength. Migdal Eder, tower of the flock. I know about that. It's Mary from tower, the tower. Well, that took a while for that to sort through. God, what are you doing? Let me see how Micah 4:8 is the place where Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock, and you, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, to you shall it come, even the former dominion shall come, the kingdom of the daughter of Jerusalem. Here's the point. This is, Jewish scholars have felt for centuries, was where in Micah was the description of where the Christ would be first presented. It would be Migdal Eder, which is the tower of the flock, which is in the field of Bethlehem, which is a part of what I do every Christmas since this came to me 10-ish years ago. It's called the Tower of the Flock, Migdal Eder. And in Migdal Eder was a tower, but under the tower was the birthing place for the Passover lambs and many of the sacrificial lambs, because they were housed in the Bethlehem fields. The shepherds were actually a kind of priest. And that's really where Jesus was born, in the place in the whole earth that was the appropriate place for the real Lamb of God to be born, where for nearly 1,500 years the lambs were born that were used in the temple sacrifices for the Passover lambs. And God had it done because there's a story, there's a message that he's giving, and that message is the tower will announce it, so to speak. That's what this verse is saying to Hebrew scholars. The tower, what tower? Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock, will announce the Messiah. That's where and did they think it was going to be a baby and shepherds would be announced to by angels in the fields? No. We have that the Motel 6 was even full and there wasn't any room in the motel. What that room means was the guest chamber. If you, but I can't go through all that. The Tower of the Flock, the tower, is where the announcement to the world was made. In a sense, the angels did it, but where was Jesus? He was in a crib, an area in the Tower of the Flock, wrapped in swaddling clothes, which were strips of cloth that they wrapped around the young lambs to keep them from scurrying about, to protect their legs. And inside the Tower of the Flock area, because that was an active birthing place for lambs, is there was plenty of swaddling clothes. That's why the angel said to the shepherds, you will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. They knew exactly where that was. Migdal Eder, the Tower of the Flock. The tower. The proclamation was associated with the tower. The Tower of the Flock. Do you think that God would use someone whose last name or identifier meant tower? Would be used to be the proclaimer of the resurrected Christ? It would be first proclaimed. Jewish scholars believe this is, O Tower of the Flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion. To you shall it come. It would be there. The first revelation, so to speak, of the coming Messiah, they were convinced, would take place in this Migdal Eder, the Tower of the Flock. It was a baby. If there was an announcement, it was angels. Were there angels associated with Mary Magdalene? He's not here. He has risen. There were multiple angels. Were they given to anybody else? There was a couple of women. None of the disciples, to some soldiers, they saw the fierce angel. I refer to him as a fierce angel that rolled the stone away. So I'm putting this, it fits. Focusing on Jesus. Mary Magdalene fits. You've got to focus on Jesus. It's the first revealing of Jesus was Migdal Eder, the Tower of the Flock. That's where it was. That's where the angels proclaimed it. The first revelation of Jesus, of the risen Christ, the resurrection, it was revealing. It was Mary, the Tower. Mary Magdalene from Magdala. The Tower. Do you think God would use someone who there was an identifying portion of their name? That's why he would choose them, in addition to the fact that they're a woman, and so it fits wonderfully with women and Eve going all the way back to the garden. And it fits wonderfully that she was a woman who had been demonized, 7, a number of completion, completely demonized. Picture all of humanity. That would not just be women, that would be people. Of how appropriate Would God connect them together? Connect his birth, the tower associated with his birth, Migdal Eder, with the area of Galilee known as Migdal. The tower is the name given to that area. And so there's a woman of that area, Mary Magdalene, Mary of the tower area. She would be the first proclaimer to people other than angels to her. But she didn't believe them. Because when she turned to Jesus there at the door, she said to him, tell me where you've put him. They've taken him away. I need to go and get his body. Even though she had heard that he had risen from the dead, she didn't believe it. And Jesus revealed his risen self, and he revealed it to her, and she saw it, and she understood. It's like God is confirming it is he. It is Jesus. And the first proclamation was in the Tower of the Flock, that he's here. The first proclaimer after his resurrection, specifically given to her, you go tell my brethren that I have risen and I'm going to my Father and their Father and my God and their God. You go and tell them. She was ordained, assigned, picked to deliver the first declaration, Mary of the Tower. Do you think God's that involved in the details? That's the point. The Monday morning, God's involved in the details. In your life, in my life. He's involved in the details in what's taking place around. Is God trying to, at a minimum, encourage me, at a maximum, encourage us? What is dead is going to be resurrected. So I'll give you an illustration that you can touch and handle and look at and see and watch it develop and see that it's got so many appendages, and it didn't just poof into that it's crystal clear to you, God, you are doing this. It's not our planning, it's not our ability. You're bringing this about. That we would say, God, Mary Magdalene was there because of a whole bigger picture that she was permitted to be a part of, honored, an incredible honoring that has many things that it's saying. But among them, Mary the Tower was given the privilege of first proclaiming to humans. That Christ is risen. And she saw it. They saw empty tombs. She had been told by angels, he's risen, he's not here. She didn't believe that. They didn't believe that. God is confirming it is he. I've put, God is meticulous in every detail. He's meticulous. In your life, in my life, Monday morning, God's at work in my life. And it's not just the huge, biggie things. It could go back to my name. It could be the area that I'm from that God's going to draw upon and will be a part of the message. Ultimately, the message is, it points to Jesus. It's about Jesus. It's what he has done. It's what he's made possible. It's what he's making possible. Ultimately, that's the message. But it's being written by God. He's the storyteller, so to speak. And he's speaking the message in every one and through every one of our life. And he's involving us and giving us an opportunity to be a part of it. God is meticulous. I don't know. Mary Magdalene, the tower. So this is a tower of the flock. This is not the tower of the flock that Jesus was birthed in. This is what they looked like. They were all over in Israel. the tower of the flock. This is an example of one that still stands and they could photograph. I want to be real clear about that. But this is what they were like. They were a fortified area. They were a lookout. They were a place where proclamations could be said. Things could be delivered. They were a place underneath. Maybe you could see the opening underneath. That's where lambs were birthed, protected in the birthing areas, especially in Bethlehem. It wasn't the Motel 6. It was Migdal Eder, the tower of the flock, the birthing area of the Passover lambs. Of all the places in the world for Jesus to be born, that's the place, because he is the true Passover lamb. Getting him there, getting Mary there safely when she was carrying a child, and they're all details. That's an incredible, bless you, Barbara. That's an incredible detail. Mary Magdalene, Mary the Tower. She was the first proclaimer to see the risen Christ and proclaim what Jesus said. You go tell my brethren this. I'm going to my Father and your Father. I'm going to my God and your God. That privilege was given to Mary Magdalene. But it was confirming to, it was tower environment announced. The environment of the birth of Christ was a tower. The environment of the proclaimer was Mary, who was born in, I'm assuming, raised in Magdala, and she was a Magdalene. And then God giving me this week a scenario that I've been living for more than 40 years, of the most recent, and seeing pieces that are 15 years old, pieces that are 9 months old. God put all kinds of pieces together. It was like, pay attention, Russ. Now watch. I've been doing all this. It relates to this, because I'm trying to encourage you. There is a resurrection coming. So you're experiencing it in a realm that you understand and have been invested in. So what I know to do is to tell you the story when it seems like it fits. It fit. Why Mary Magdalene? Because she's associated with tower. Well, why that? Because God chose, that's how the first pronounced proclamation, that's where it would take place, in the environment of a tower, spoken by angels. This is where you'll find it. Same kind of thing, spoken by angels to Mary, but ultimately she did not believe what they said. But Jesus revealed himself to her in an incredible time period. Was it just happenstance? It was not happenstance. Please don't look at your life as, it's just a series of events that just happen to happen. It's all luck. It's not. Well, that does have scary elements. Well, I need to pay attention to everything all the time. Well, that'd be a good idea. That'd be a good idea. Mary Magdalene. Mary of the Tower. Magdalene. Chosen by God. And you could say, well, chosen by God, God's just God's God, so he can choose whoever he wants, whenever he wants. And so he just chose her, and that's why, because God just chose her. And I want to suggest God is always telling a story. He's always illustrating the story. He's always adding to the story. He's always explaining the story. He's always doing that. He's always showing shadows and types of the story. The core story is Jesus, is the provision. God's always doing that. It's not random. It's not just, oh, I just will happen to pick Mary Magdalene. She was there, she was handy, she was around the tomb. No, she was selected, I'm going to say, before the foundation of the world. And she kept herself in a place where she was available to the intentions of God for her. And she was able to walk in it because she had kept herself in a place where she was available to the purposes of God. In spite of the 7 demons that had to wreck a portion of her life. That it didn't stop it. So there is a reason. There's a reason. And the reason is it fits. It fits into the story that God is weaving, God is telling. It's about Jesus. The Holy Spirit is teaching us everything, explaining everything. So it makes sense. The more time you avail yourself to the Holy Spirit, it's to your advantage. It's to your huge advantage. Because he's the one who teaches. Jesus said he'll teach you everything. He'll teach you the things that I have said. It's to your huge advantage to be as acquainted with the Holy Spirit as you can. Mary Magdalene.